Hi everyone, welcome to the best recapped movie. A few years after the London incident, Trumbull became the President of the United States, and this time, his saving angel, Mike Banning, fell. Angel Has Fallen is an action and thriller film with a political focus, which was made in 2019, and the exciting events of this film make you unable to ignore it. Spoilers ahead. At first, the Secret Service agent, Mike Banning, is in a difficult military situation where he has to defend himself. After killing several people and stopping an agent on the stairs, he is finally shot, and it turns out that he is training. His old friend Wade Jennings approaches him and tells him that no one has gone this far, however, he can try any other scenario here. Bruno, who was beaten by Mike during training, is angry with him, but Mike tells him that if he cannot defend himself in training, he will be killed in the real mission. It turns out that Wade is a former commanding officer and is now the CEO of the private military company Salient Global. He tells Mike that the Department of Defense ruined his business, and now all he has is Salient, which is alive on training contracts. Mike will be the head of the President's intelligence service soon, so he promises his friend Wade that he will do everything he can for him, and before saying goodbye, he asks him to come to DC to spend time with him and his family. Mike seems to be suffering from pain and is taking pills for it. When he comes home, he joins his wife, Leah, kisses her, and realizes that she will return to her job as a nurse soon, but on the other hand, Leah does not want to miss their daughter Lynn by returning to work. Mike suffers from migraines and lack of sleep, and he goes to the doctor secretly because he doesn't want anyone to know about it. He and David Gentry are the president's personal bodyguards and escort him to participate in a news conference. After answering a few questions, President Trumbull avoids answering a reporter's question that the U.S. foreign policy is developing to increase its military power worldwide. He is upset because this question is confidential, and he realizes a spy is among his men. Vice President Kirby confirms his words and wants that person to introduce himself, but no one admits. Wade comes to DC at Mike's invitation to spend time with him and his family and tells Leah about memories from the past. When the two of them are alone, Mike admits he is not ready to accept his new job, and Wade conforms that, tells him that we were not made for it because we are lions.
We're lions.
Leah notices Mike's recent insomnia and asks him to discuss it with her. Mike promises her after kissing her that they will talk about it as soon as he returns from the mission. Since Trumbull is fond of fishing, the security team receives a mission to protect the president at the lake. After a little conversation with Mike, Trumbull informs him that he deserves this position, so he is appointed the head of the intelligence service. After a few minutes, Mike loses his balance, and the president asks him to rest, forcing him to replace him with his colleague Murph. At the same time, a group on the other side gets out of a van, prepares a military weapon, and shoots some drones at the president. At first, they think it's a bird. Still, as soon as Mike finds out, he asks Murph to take the president to the cabin. The drones fatally exploded on the security teams and killed them all. After that, the drones pass over Mike's head, but they don't shoot at him, and it turns out that their purpose is to destroy the president. Although Murph keeps him alive by throwing the president into the water, the boat explodes, and he is killed. Mike grabs Trumbull, and they enter the water, but a huge explosion occurs above their heads. The attackers run away, and Mike and Trumbull are taken to the hospital. Leah gets worried when she hears this news and goes to the hospital, and the doctor informs VP Kirby that the president is in a coma. Sam Wilcox also informs that Mike is the only one among the security agents who is alive. In this situation, after he is sworn in, he will be appointed as the current president of the United States. Helen Thompson and Ramirez from the FBI go to the scene, and Helen realizes that the shots were fired from a mile away. On the other hand, Leah goes to the hospital to see Mike, but David says that he is in the ICU and can't do much more and takes them to a room to rest a little. Mike wakes up and sees that he is being handcuffed, and Helen asks him to tell her what he remembers. Still, after remembering the attack, Mike asks her to see the president. However, Helen says that this will not happen. With Helen interrogating Mike and his wife, it seems that they found Mike's DNA in that van and also found an encrypted file of him on the dark web. $10 million were deposited into Mike's bank account, and he hid his physical disorders and migraines from the security service. All the drones with the ability to recognize the face of the president and the security agents are shot down. She knows all this is Mike's plan and accuses him, but Mike believes this is a conspiracy against him. She doesn't believe his words and Mike prepares to go to jail. The news also announces that the chief angel of the president's bodyguards has fallen due to the crime of trying to kill the president. His wife Leah and their daughter Lynn are quarantined at home under strict security protection. After that, we see 3 vans moving Mike to the prison, and a group secretly follows them. They cut off the electric current of the vans, and the cars stop. The rear and front vans are attacked and lost, and the attackers assassinate the driver and guard of the van carrying Mike and take Mike hostage to their own car. One of them says that we will arrive in 3 minutes. Upon hearing that, Mike attacks them and kills all of them. After the accident, he gets out of the car and opens the handcuffs and chains. He takes off the cover of one of them and realizes that he is Bruno. He is shocked. After hearing this, Helen immediately reaches the central unit of the FBI and orders them to search for him with more force. Then, she receives a phone call from the higher authorities and says that the source of the money deposited into Mike's account was from Moscow. It is clear that the attack is the work of none other than Wade, and he receives a call from his superior that his voice has been altered, and he blames him for the fact that Mike is still alive. However, Wade explains that all the evidence is against Mike, and the FBI still finds him guilty, but his superior orders him to kill Mike and pray that Trumbull never wakes up. Mike calls his wife from a gas station and assures her he will solve this problem. On the other hand, he knows that the FBI is monitoring his voice, so he tells them he doesn't give up in order not to prove his innocence. 2 citizens identify him and pull a gun on him because they know that they will get a big reward for handing him over. Still, when they want to inform the police, Mike uses this opportunity and surrenders them both. He runs away with a truck. Helen identifies the location of the gas station. She immediately sends the troops in that direction, and Mike runs away to the forest while the police are chasing him. He makes an accident and releases the truck's cargo part to prevent the police from chasing him. However, the police still chase him, and a helicopter follows him with lights, so Mike speeds up. In this case, he has a serious accident by hitting an obstacle, and the truck collapses. He is a little confused due to the collision, but he manages to run away to the forest before the police arrive. The police search for him at night, and Helen and her forces can't find him until morning. Ramirez joins her shortly after and reports that none of the blood samples in the van match Mike. Of course, the encrypted folder in the dark web did not achieve any results. Kirby, as the interim president of the United States, decides to attack Moscow in a meeting of the heads of the country, and despite the opposition of some of them, he insists on starting the war. He says that the president of the United States is now in a coma. Mike breaks the window of a car to steal it. On the other hand, Wade knows that he will find out what happened, so with the help of his subordinate Travis in checking the time of the truck accident last midnight, he orders to find him as soon as possible with all his strength. Mike goes to the middle of the forest as if he is looking for something, and suddenly, an older man pulls a gun and says, "How did you find me?" It turns out that the older man is Clay Banning, his father, and Mike asks him not to call him son because Clay left him and his mother a long time ago. Since Clay was a military member, he says that if he went back, he would still do it because the war made him a different person, and he believes that leaving was the best thing in his life. In a live speech, VP Kirby announces that the president is still in a coma and informs that Mike Banning has plotted to assassinate the president with the full support of Russian leaders. Now, with all options on the table, he plans to hire a military contractor for the matter, and upon hearing this news, Wade says we will return to work. His people discovered by hacking the information service that Mike always follows his father, who is now in West Virginia. At night, Clay realizes that a group is attacking and wakes Mike up. They enter the forest through a secret path, and Mike is surprised. He activates the explosive bombs that he has already placed around his house and destroys all the attackers with successive explosions. Mike is shocked by his father's work. The next morning, while Mike collects the bodies in front of the cottage, Clay comes out and informs him of Kirby's words regarding his accusation on the radio and says, "I told you that they will turn their backs on you." Mike calls Wade through the phone of one of them and tells him not to look for me because I will find you myself. Mike takes the printing machine he saw in his father's house, and Clay unveils his old car. They enter the main roads together. Through a message, he sends Helen and Ramirez to his father's cottage with CCTV cameras, and there, above the dead, he wrote, "We work for Salient." She says that she had to research the salient in Iraq, and now she wants to know what's going on because she suspects it might be a trap for Mike, so she decides to review the salient. Trumbull regains consciousness, and Mike decides to go to the president after hearing this news. However, he is still worried about Leah and Lynn. Clay learns that he has a wife and daughter and is shocked. Mike also informs his father that they should separate and says goodbye to him. Wade's superior calls him and warns him that if his work doesn't work, he will have to cut off his connection, and it turns out that he is none other than Kirby. Wade wants his contract, but Kirby tells him to finish the job first, then he will get billions of dollars. Two of Wade's secret agents go to Mike's house and threaten her to go with them, but fortunately, Clay is there and prevents him from doing so by killing them both. He introduces himself as Mike's father, but Leah doesn't believe him and asks him to tell something personal about Mike. He convinces her that he is Mike's father by telling her personal information about the place and time of his birth while shedding tears. David and Sam inform Trumbull that Mike has hidden his physical problems. They have also obtained information that he has been supported by the Kremlin. Wade is preparing a full-scale attack to kill the president. Helen and Ramirez go to the salient to investigate Wade. Still, after welcoming them, Wade shoots them and the pilot, as soon as she asks about Mike, then kills Ramirez and Helen. He orders Travis that Mike has given them information about here. He says the salient is missing, and that they must leave as soon as possible. They head to the president's hospital. Mike threatens the driver of a police car to go to the trunk and equip himself with his clothes and gun. He falsely reports that there was a shooting outside the emergency room so that he can enter the hospital himself. He enters the elevator by distracting the security guards and subduing his colleague Billy. As soon as he enters the ICU, he shouts that he wants to meet Trumbull. When he sees David, he surrenders and asks him to meet the president. David informs Trumbull about this, and he agrees to meet him. Mike says there is a red status and asks the president to leave now, but David says it's safe here and gets into an argument with him. Then Trumbull asks him to uncuff Mike and says he's still alive because of him. While Wade is 20 minutes from the hospital, Mike orders to take out the president by checking the surroundings. Still, he doesn't take long to notice that the nurse's computer system suddenly stops working. The hospital's gas systems are under the control of Wade's people, and Mike realizes that the hospital will explode soon. They immediately decide to take out the president and evacuate the hospital. Now that Trumbull has awakened, US leaders oppose any war against Russia, despite Kirby's insistence on starting a war. Mike and David take Trumbull into the car, but as soon as he leaves the hospital, they encounter Wade's car and his men. The shooting between them starts violently, and David is shot in the leg. On the other hand, Wade's shot at Trumbull fails, and Mike manages to move him to the next building. The hospital explodes and collapses due to the accumulation of gas and the activation of the detonator. After that, Mike asks the civilians to evacuate the building immediately. Examining the map on the wall, he asks the agents to build a barricade, then takes the president to a safe room. David is also responsible for protecting him. Mike leaves to eliminate the attackers while Trumbull pleads with him to stay alive. Wade and his men infiltrate the building, and the shooting starts again. Mike prevents the attackers from penetrating from another way and gets into a fight with some of them and kills a large number of them with precise shots and throwing grenades. On the other hand, the agents run out of bullets. They are also targeted by a grenade, and the trench is lost. Wade and his men open the door and see that no one is there. They think he has tricked them while David and Trumbull are behind the secret room. The police force arrives, and Mike sees him after killing one of Wade's men. Wade is forced to leave the building and orders preparations to be made for him to leave the building. A helicopter arrives on the roof to take him out, but Mike still insists on killing him. Hence, a shootout ensues between them until he kills one of the attackers on the stairs. In this case, a grenade is thrown towards him, and he is forced to place his body on it to save himself. However, after the explosion, Mike gets confused and loses his power. Outside, Wade wants to make sure of his death, so he goes to the helicopter with a little delay when suddenly the helicopter explodes with a grenade fired by Mike and is destroyed. They are placed face to face and shoot at each other until Mike's bullets runs out, and by throwing the gun at him, he engages in a physical fight with him and disarms him. They attack each other with knives, and Mike stops him with a precise blow to his side. Wade stops fighting and leans on the side of a platform while losing a lot of blood, and Mike sits next to him. Wade says he's happy to be killed by him, just like the lions, and Mike approves.
Lions are lions.
After Wade's death, the situation gets better, and Kirby feels regret and anger when he sees Trumbull at the summit of 20 next to the president of Russia. Trumbull enters the room and, after greeting him, informs him that a brave FBI agent helped to reveal this matter before her death. Wade Jennings kept the details of their dealings with him, and Trumbull planned to keep him for 3.5 years to make fun of him, but he explains that these things are old, and he plans to replace him with David. Kirby is arrested for his crimes, and Clay decides to live with Mike and his family. Leah tells him she and Mike are happy he is here and asks him not to break his heart again. Mike enters the president's room and admits he had hidden his illness before these events. He has decided to resign and put his badge on the table. Trumbull gets up and says the decision is yours, but I still want you for the director, and takes the sign and says no more secret. Mike accepts, and they hug each other at the movie's end. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel.